Hey everybody, welcome back to the shop. Before I get started with this video, I just wanted to record a introduction and disclaimer. Remember, my channel is about my learning experiences, me getting into this hobby, all of the new different aspects, and a lot of times I might make mistakes, especially around terminology, things like that. So what you're about to see is me working with metrology and inspection and some of those tools, and throughout this video you're going to hear me refer to a test indicator as a dial indicator. I've since been made aware that there are differences between these types of indicators, which I kind of knew that, but I just wasn't sure as I was recording and using those instruments. So I have two types of indicators. One of them is a dial indicator. The dial indicators are plunge style, and there's specific uses for those for vertical repeatability when you're working on measuring things. This is a dial indicator, as I understand it. That's what you call these, a dial indicator. The other indicator style that I have is a dial test indicator, or a test indicator as most people refer to it as, and that is for repeating, measuring different materials and doing a sweep across materials, things like that. I still have a lot to learn on these, but that's my understanding. So I just wanted to put that out there before the video starts. I'm using a test indicator throughout the video, but I called it a dial indicator. So for what it's worth, I just want to put a disclaimer there. Go easy on me in the comments. Hope you enjoy the video. Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Deez. This is my workshop. Today we're going to be working with inspection. I'm going to finally use the granite surface plate and actually try to test some of the tooling I have using some of the existing indicators and things like that I have. In addition, I want to try and test out my homemade handy stand, third hand, tool holder stand, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to use a stone and just make sure there's no burrs on the bottom of this. And I want to put this on the surface plate. I made a mounting system for different indicators, or there'll be an arm out here. There's a video on that. I'm going to continue to add to this as I come up with ideas and ways that I can use this. But for today, I'm going to use it to hold an indicator to test like my 1, 2, 3 blocks and maybe some of the other machining tools that I purchased, just to see how accurate they are. This isn't for anything other than an exercise for me to learn and begin to learn how to use a surface plate and some of the metrology equipment that I have. So this video is going to have some improvements to this stand that I've made. I'm going to clean up the height gauge that I purchased, and we're going to clean the surface plate using a couple methods. I might try the waterless hand cleaner. I've seen a lot of people post and say they've used that. In addition to that, Windex. A lot of people use Windex. So we're going to get that cleaned up, and then we'll, at the end of this, towards the end of the video is when we'll actually do some inspection. But I've got some things I want to do before we get to that point. First thing I want to do is hot glue this bracket that I made so it doesn't rust. We're getting into the spring, summer months, a lot of rain. This little piece that I made is going to rust. I did put some T9 bow shield on it. This was a test a year ago that I did. It's really held up nicely, but I want to go ahead and just hot glue this thing. I like hot gluing things. They look nice, and it does actually really help with keeping the rust off. So that's going to be the first thing we do. Then I'm going to clean up the height gauge that I have. There's a lot of grease packed on that for shipping and storage so it doesn't rust. It looks like a lot of pretty good quality from Shars. The case is big, it's going to protect it, but I haven't really got it out and cleaned it up. We're going to do that so that we can use the height gauge as well with the surface plate, and then we will get the surface plate out and continue on with that. First thing we're going to do though is hot glue this bracket that I made and make that a little more rust proof and make it look nicer. Let's get started. We're going to heat this up and then to a blue or a straw color, and then we're going to throw it in the oil and just let it sit in there and hot blue. It's pretty easy to do. I've done this quite a few times. I enjoy hot bluing things, and that's what we're going to do. Got my pliers ready, got my fire extinguisher ready, and we just need to heat this up and then put it in the oil. I like to swish it around and let that oil get on the part, and we'll just let it sit in there till it cools down. It was pretty hot, so we want that to cool down. Once that cools down, I'll bring you back and we'll clean it off and I'll show you the part. It should be cooled down enough in order to not be a problem. Get this out of here. Drain it as best we can here. Set it there. Let's get our oil out of the way. I upgraded to a metal container after the last time I was using glass jars. I hot blued something very large. It shattered the glass. I knew that was probably going to happen, and I decided, okay, I got to get me a metal container and not use glass. So let's get this out of the way. Now, roll this piece around a little bit. We'll test it and see. Yeah, we're quite cool now. Clean this up. Oh yeah, I like it. It's very cool. Looks great, and that's gonna give me that rust protection I'm looking for. We'll run this through there. Clean that out. Do the same over here. Clean that one. And we also have our little threaded holes. Might as well clean those out while we're at it. Try to anyway. And we'll get this side. I like it. Looks a lot better, and that's going to give me that rust protection I'm looking for. Next thing we want to get to is cleaning up the shars. This is the height gauge that I purchased. I showed it briefly in another video, but I really haven't gotten this out and messed with the surface plate yet, so I'm ready to do that. The first one I bought was a 6-inch, and it had broken glass or plastic over the dial, so I went ahead and sent it back, and I thought for I think it was a buck and a half more. Let's get the 12-inch. Probably won't ever need it, but I went ahead and got it anyway. But here's what you got. Here's what I got in the box. A little bit of a manual, how to read it. A little certificate. I showed that before. Certificate of inspection that it meets certain criteria. Whatever you want to think about these things. The height gauge itself seems to be made very well. And then there's an adapter for an 8mm holder to hold different tooling and stuff. But again, everything is greased to keep it from rusting. So I kind of want to clean all that off of there. This isn't too bad. But I do. Actually, this, let me get a towel. I don't really need to clean this one off. It's not too bad. So let's get this case. The case is very substantial. I think I read a review. Somebody said, you know, it seems to be made well, but this thing is just so big. But I think, you know, if you consider what it is, it's supposed to be a precision instrument, and you want to protect it. If you don't have anywhere to put it, this is a nice little case. It's blow molded or whatever they make, but it's made very well. It'll protect your height gauge. So if you don't want to use it, don't use it. I don't want to get grease on here because I'm just going to wipe it up. What we want to do is get it out of this plastic. Like I said, this adapter piece really isn't too bad. It's not greasy. It is 8mm though, and I don't have any 8mm adapters and things like that for mounting things to this, but I do plan on making one someday. That'll be an upcoming future project. Let's get this plastic off of here and clean this thing up. Don't really need the plastic. Don't really. So there's the grease I was telling you about. If you look at the end, the scriber end, it's just full of grease, which is good. That way it's not going to rust as it's being stored. Who knows how long these things will sit. I just want to make sure we clean that stuff off of there for when we're ready to use it. It's not caking up. I don't want to get grease on the surface plate. I guess that's what I'm getting at. So that takes care of that. Pretty easy to clean off. There is a carbide tip on this because you're supposed to be able to scratch your materials. That's kind of interesting to see. And finally we have the base, which has more of this grease paper. I want to try to be careful. And it's full of grease. So I want to get all that schmoo off of there. Like I said, I don't want to run this on my surface plate and then have grease and oil down into that surface plate. So I think it's important to get this cleaned off. I'll probably even use a little bit of maybe brake clean or something, a solvent, to clean off the residual, and then I might lightly coat it with oil again. Or if I get it clean enough, I may just leave well enough alone. Yeah, there's quite a bit of oil on there, or grease. It's not oil, it's grease. That's good. That whole bottom, you can see it's not rusted. It's fine. There's a little bit of grease in there. It's real thick grease too. Alright, I think that is most of it. Hopefully I kept it on camera. We can get this pan out of the way now. And before I set it down, I'm going to take a clean towel and do one more final cleaning of that grease to get it off of there. I really think this thing is made very well. There we go. The dial indicator that's on it, this one's not cracked, which is nice. And there is a lock. There is I think that is a lock to where I could rotate. I think, what's that do? This is a micro adjustment here. You can lock it in, and you're like, and you can say, I need to go down, 500 thou, or each of these increments are 1 thou. So let's say I need to go down. Let's line it up actually to 0 here. So if we get it where we want it to be, let's say that's the height that we want it to be. We lock it in, and I want to go down 10 thou. You can use this. to bring it down. Fine adjustment to 10 thou. So you lock this top portion and it pushes the bottom portion down. If you want to go 20 thou, of course I'm going backwards. There's 20 or 30 thou. Pretty handy. And then you can scribe your line if you're trying to work on materials and mark things out. The other thing that this has, like I said, and I can adapt this for other tooling. But if you look here, we have the scribe. Well, there's other tooling that you can mount in here in order to work with, you know, dial indicators or all kinds of things. That's why I wanted to get this height gauge. I wanted to be able to mount dial indicators and things like that. And I know, well, this is supposed to be precision ground on the bottom and should give me an actual precise enough piece of equipment so that I can actually do some inspection and hopefully get some accurate measurements on things. Alright, we have our granite surface plate out. It's pretty clean, but I'm going to go ahead and just clean it with some Windex before we get started messing around with this thing. Just clean that. Use a microfiber cloth. Hopefully there's no dust, residual dust or anything. Let that dry up a little bit. Hopefully it gets rid of any grease or grime off of there. Pretty close. You can see the color change as that Windex evaporates. Let's just put this up here. I already cleaned all this off. This is the height gauge. If that helps at all. And that moves around nicely. So if I needed to mark some materials, I can set my height and then mark what I'm doing. For instance, if I have my 1, 2, 3 blocks, let me grab a paper towel. I want to get the oil off of this so I don't get oil onto my surface plate. And measure the height. So you measure the height of something. That should be exactly 3 inches. And sure enough, I got the 3 down here. Kind of hard for you to see, but if I lock that in, show you, we have our 3 inches, and it's on the 0. That's just slightly off. Actually, I did mess with that a little bit. Let me bring that back down, lock that in. There's 3 inches, assuming that this is exactly 3 inches. 3 inches in height. But if you had a workpiece in here, then you could say, okay, I need to go down a 1/2 inch and make a marker all the way around. You could bring that out, lower this down 50 thou or 500 thou, and then come and mark your piece. But what I want to do is test my indicator gauge and see how accurate across these parts are. And eventually I'll figure out a way to mount my indicator with this, because this has a precision ground base. But I want to use my indicator base plate. Now I just used a stone and made sure there's no burrs on the bottom of this. Wiped it off, cleaned it. I think I'll clean it with a little Windex too. And that sits pretty good right there. Now, the way that I'm going to mount my indicator, I hot blued. The bracket piece that I made turned out really nice. That's going to go like this. Let me grab up. I'm going to want that lower than that. We will tighten that up in a minute. And then I made this hole 3/8 for my vertical rod, or horizontal rod. It's 3/8 inch rod. But in addition to the reason for me doing that was so I could actually mount my indicator holder in here as well. Let's get that mounted up. So if I slide that up there, tighten that down. Let's get our indicator holder in here, tighten that down. Snug that down a little bit. This will need to be, I want to set this up. Let's check the long end of this. So let's slide this down till we get this touching. Here's the setup that we have. I'm going to sweep this 1, 2, 3 block across. We've got it pretty close to the 0 on my dial indicator. Again, we're using my homemade stand that I made. It's going to stay in place. I'm actually going to move the workpiece and not the stand, because this isn't totally precision. I don't know. Let's do a test. If we push on the corners, I can move that needle just a little bit, maybe a tenth. If I push that, I'll see. Clearly, there's issues with my stand, right? This isn't precision. That's 300 thou. That's not good. What's this corner do? Same thing. So that must be pulling it upward. So I'm just going to leave that in place. And I'm going to move my workpiece, and we're going to pay attention to the 0 up here and see how much it moves. Like I say, it's a little bit to the left. I don't know if I fiddle with that, if it's going to make it worse. All right, let's carry on. I've got everything. I'm not going to touch my base because the base is not, again, it's not precision. But we are going to move our block. And we'll see just how much that moves, if at all. So we're kind of in the middle now. Let's move it over to the side. I don't see that, I can't detect that that needle's moving at all. If we bring it over. And I didn't see that needle move at all. And again, to verify, you know, if we move it towards the edge, you'll see that that needle will move there. So it is on the material. If we bring it over to the other side, I bumped the indicator. So let's swing it around. So far that needle is not moving. I'd say that's pretty well ground. Oh, I bumped it again. That's pretty ground very well. Oops. Now, let's clean off the other 1, 2, 3 block, make sure there's no oil on it. And let's see how they are together. I think these are supposed to be ground in pairs. I'm not sure. These were probably cheap Chinese ones, so who knows if they were true pairs. But here is the other 1, 2, 3 block that I got. So we're just going to sweep across, and we'll be able to tell if both of them are close. I'll bet. I don't know. Let's see. So we're going to sweep across, and you can already see that there is maybe 2/10, 3/10, 2/10 difference between the two. So if I sweep across, I'd call that 1 to 2/10 difference between these two. Now maybe I need to flip this around. I guess I probably should have been a little more careful there. Okay. Put those together. And again, we're still on the 0 with this block on the right. Let's sweep across and see. I bet it's still 1/10, which that means it's ground parallel. It's just not equal to this one. Yeah. We're just a 1/10 under on the other side. If I move it, I did flip it over, so that kind of makes a little sense. So let's sweep this one. Let's get this one out of the way. Let's see what we are left to right. Well, now we're back to the 0. So it almost seems like, if we go back, it seems like this end is slightly lower than this end. But this end now seems to be parallel with that one. So I'm gonna push it, I'm gonna flip it in for end. Let me turn this around. I bring this back over. These should be, yeah, so these ends, I should maybe mark those. Those are, oh, I'm bumping it. Stop bumping it. They are very, very, very close, if not machined the same together. For being cheap 1, 2, 3 blocks, they sure are ground pretty well. They're not Starrett quality, and the indicator's not Starrett quality, but they're coming out, they're measuring pretty well. For like I said, for the 1, 2, 3 blocks that they are. The variations that we're seeing up here are really from me bumping the thing. Like that. Let's test this one again all the way around. It's pretty similar. Kind of hard to complain about that, I think. Well, the one end on this one's not as precise as, I keep bumping that thing. Don't do that. Bring it over. Yeah, this block is not as accurate as this other block. This one seems to be machined a lot better. Bring that across. Nice. I like this 1, 2, 3 block. It's machined very well. Ground down pretty well. This one here seems to have a little bit of variation in it. Let's move on to testing my 1, 2, or my V blocks. I'm kind of curious how those are. They weren't advertised as precision, you know, V blocks or anything, but they were ground. I would assume they're pretty close. Let's test these V blocks. So here's one of the V blocks. I've got it, as you can see, it is reading. Let's just sweep this across and see if the V block moves, and it does not. The indicator does not. Let's butt up the other one and see if they're a matching pair. Well, these are better than the 1, 2, 3 blocks. It's not too bad. Let's turn these around. Sweep these across. Nice. These are matched pairs. Really nice. That's nice to see. Really cool. I'm happy to see that. Anyway, you get the idea. The stand that I made is working well, I think. You know, it's not, as long as I don't move it, I think I'm fine. It's just a fixed point. And what we're doing is measuring any difference between one end and the other. This isn't moving, so I should be able to read any variances in my workpieces. All in all, I think this is going to be fun to use more and more. Let's flip this over and measure one of these shorter parallels here. So we're back on the 0. If we slide that over, that's measuring spot on. I'm pretty happy with these V blocks that I picked up. Very nice. Well, I hope you enjoyed that little bit of me getting into this inspection a little bit and learning just basics on how to do some inspection of some of the tooling that I have. Something I discovered in that little exercise was my 1, 2, 3 blocks don't appear to be a match set. At least that's my opinion. These weren't expensive anyway, but there is about a 1 to 2/10 variance between the two, and one of them I think has its own variance from one end to the other. Maybe my methods were wrong with the way that I was inspecting, but I think my logic is correct. If I have a fixed point and I move my workpiece over and my surface is flat, which it's supposed to be, any variance that I have would be in the workpiece itself as it moves along that fixed point. So I don't believe these are a match set necessarily. They're really close. They're within 1 to 2/10. But they're not perfect. What was really neat to see though was my V blocks. These seem to be a match set. I think they were ground together on the same machine and it was trued in very well. I don't have anything any more precise than that. It is what it is. But that needle would not move when I ran across both sides and I flipped them over, did the same. I think these are a match set. I'm pretty happy to see how well those match together when I ran the indicator across. The other thing, let's set these down here, that was interesting, the height of these, I used my surface gauge, and you know, this thing of course can move up and down, and you got your readout here in inches. This is an inch scale, good enough to a thou, and damage something. Let's get this out of the way before I break something. And you know, you would expect a 1, 2, 3 block to read correctly. So if we bring this down onto the 1, 2, 3 block, we're on the 0 and we're on 3 inches. Pretty neat to see right away. This thing is pretty accurate, easy to read, and then you have your fine-tune adjustments. Pretty cool stuff. And if we flip this over to the 2 inches, it should read very accurately with the 2 inch mark. Now this is off by 2 thou, so I don't know if it was my method of bringing that down. It was. I kind of tapped it. You know, you got to remember all these things have moving parts and there's tolerances inside of them, and when I tapped on it, it brought the needle over too far. But now we're reading exactly on the 0. We're at 2 inches. And finally, let's check for the 1 inch side. Bring this down. And it's right on the 0. Again, this is good enough to 1 thou. I'm pretty happy with that. That is 1 inch on the money. So the 1, 2, 3 blocks they're very accurate, but they're not. I don't think they're a pair. Really cool stuff. I'm gonna play with this more off camera. There's no sense in you watching me fiddle around with this, but this is gonna be fun. I like being able to measure very precisely some of the things I'm working on and just inspect different things that I have. I hope you enjoyed. I'm gonna close the video here. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Thanks for watching.